Welcome to the world of daily life stories. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss new stories. Enjoy listening. The incident. It was a bright Monday morning when the soft hum of jet engines echoed through the airport terminal. People bustled about, dragging suitcases, sipping coffee, and glancing anxiously at their boarding passes. Among the crowd was Mariah Jackson, a poised and accomplished black woman in her mid-30s. Mariah was no stranger to travel. Her work as a corporate consultant often had her jet-setting to different cities. Today, she was flying to New York to speak at a high-profile leadership conference. Dressed sharply in a navy blue suit and heels, she exuded confidence and composure. As Mariah approached the boarding gate, she noticed the stares. A mix of curiosity and judgment, the kind she had grown accustomed to in certain spaces. She brushed it off, focusing instead on the presentation slides she had been perfecting for weeks. Her zone of concentration was interrupted by the flight attendant's cheerful voice announcing the boarding process. Mariah was in first class, a perk she'd earned through years of hard work and climbing the corporate ladder. She smiled politely at the gate agent and stepped onto the plane. Once inside, the flight attendants greeted her with forced smiles, their eyes betraying a flicker of hesitation. Mariah's seat was at the front, near the window. She settled in, adjusting her laptop bag and pulling out a book to pass the time before takeoff. As the plane began boarding the rest of the passengers, Mariah noticed something odd. The flight attendants seemed overly attentive to other first-class passengers, offering them menus, drinks, and pleasantries. However, when they passed by her seat, they avoided eye contact. At first, Mariah thought it might just be a coincidence. Maybe they were busy. Maybe they would circle back. When the plane finally filled and the doors closed, the attendants began their rounds. One attendant, a tall woman with a sharp uniform and a name tag that read Cheryl, approached the passengers in Mariah's row. She handed menus to the couple sitting next to her and asked if they'd like a drink. Then, Cheryl turned and walked away without so much as glancing at Mariah. Mariah's chest tightened. She debated whether to say something but decided to give them the benefit of the doubt. When Cheryl passed by again, Mariah raised her hand slightly and spoke in her calm, professional tone. "Excuse me, could I have a menu as well?" Cheryl paused, her expression neutral, but her body language stiff. "We're out of menus," she said curtly and walked away before Mariah could respond. Mariah's eyes followed Cheryl as she continued down the aisle, handing out more menus to other passengers. Her stomach churned. The excuse had been flimsy at best, and it was clear now that something was off. Deciding not to jump to conclusions, Mariah flagged down another flight attendant, a younger man with a nervous smile. "Hi there," she began, keeping her voice pleasant. "I'd like to see a menu if possible." The young man's smile faltered. Let me check," he mumbled and disappeared toward the galley. 10 minutes passed. He never returned. By now, Mariah's patience was wearing thin. She observed the attendants laughing and chatting with other passengers, refilling drinks and providing menus freely. Her mind raced with questions. Was this deliberate? Was it oversight? She decided to document the situation. Discreetly, she pulled out her phone and began recording snippets of the service around her. She captured moments of Cheryl smiling warmly at other passengers while ignoring her entirely. When the drink cart rolled by, Mariah decided to try again. "Excuse me," she said firmly, addressing Cheryl. "I've asked twice now for a menu. Can you please bring me one?" Cheryl's eyes narrowed slightly. "Like I said, we're out of menus," she repeated, her tone colder this time. Mariah's jaw tightened. She could feel the eyes of nearby passengers on her. Some looked uncomfortable, while others quickly glanced away, pretending not to notice. Mariah's mind flashed back to other moments in her life when she had been dismissed or overlooked because of her skin color. But this time, she wasn't going to let it slide. "That's interesting," Mariah said, her voice steady but laced with steel. "Because I've watched you give menus to at least 6 other passengers in the last 15 minutes. Cheryl's cheeks flushed, but she didn't back down. "I don't know what you think you saw," but we don't have any more, she snapped, before walking away. Mariah's hands trembled slightly as she gripped her phone. She took a deep breath, reminding herself to stay composed. She pulled up the airline's customer service email on her phone and began drafting a detailed account of the incident, attaching the videos she'd recorded. But as she typed, an idea struck her. Why stop at customer service when she could go straight to the top? She quickly researched the airline's corporate structure, finding the name of the CEO. Mariah had always believed in addressing issues head-on, and this was no exception. She crafted a concise but powerful email, detailing the blatant discrimination she had experienced and emphasizing how unacceptable it was for an airline of their reputation. Before she hit send, she paused, rereading her words to ensure they struck the perfect balance of professionalism and assertiveness. Satisfied, she pressed send and leaned back in her seat, her heart still pounding. She wasn't sure what would come of it, but she knew one thing: she wouldn't let this incident define her flight. Mariah picked up her book and began to read, ignoring the glances and whispers around her. Little did she know, the email she had just sent would set off a chain of events that would shake the airline to its core. The incident, 1,000 words. Sophia Daniels was settling into her plush first-class seat, excited about the journey ahead. It was her first time flying with Elite Wings Airlines, a brand known for its luxury and impeccable service. Everything around her radiated elegance, from the soft leather seats to the calming ambience of the cabin. She had worked hard to earn this experience, and today was supposed to be special. As the plane prepared for takeoff, the flight attendants began distributing menus to the passengers. Sophia noticed their professional smiles and courteous behavior as they walked down the aisle. A well-dressed flight attendant named Emma approached the row in front of Sophia, handing out menus to the passengers with a polished demeanor. Sophia waited patiently, anticipating her turn. But when Emma reached her row, she skipped Sophia entirely and moved on to the passengers behind her. At first, Sophia thought it might have been a simple oversight. Mistakes happen, she reminded herself. "Excuse me," Sophia said politely, flashing a warm smile. "I didn't receive a menu." Emma stopped, turned around, and gave Sophia a brief, dismissive glance. "We've run out," she said curtly, before walking away without another word. Sophia was taken aback. She glanced around the cabin and noticed that other passengers, including those in rows farther back, were still receiving menus. It didn't add up. She decided to give Emma the benefit of the doubt. Perhaps there really were no more menus available. But the pit in her stomach told her otherwise. Moments later, she saw Emma returning with a stack of menus. The flight attendant distributed them to the passengers nearby, completely bypassing Sophia again. This time, it was undeniable, she was being deliberately ignored. Sophia felt her cheeks flush with embarrassment. She could feel the weight of other passengers' gazes, some curious, others sympathetic, but no one said a word. She took a deep breath, determined not to let the situation escalate. When Emma walked past her again, Sophia tried once more. "I noticed you're giving out more menus," she said calmly. "Could I please have one as well?" Emma paused and turned to face her, her expression icy. "I told you, we're out," she snapped, her voice loud enough for others to hear. Several heads turned in their direction. Sophia's heart sank. It wasn't just the words, it was the tone, the condescension, the implication that she didn't belong here. "But you just handed out more menus," Sophia replied, her voice steady but firm. Emma smirked. "Maybe this class of service isn't for everyone," she said under her breath, but loud enough for Sophia to catch. The words hit her like a slap. She couldn't believe what she was hearing. Was this really happening in a space that prided itself on equality and luxury? Sophia sat back in her seat, her hands trembling slightly. She didn't want to cause a scene, but she also couldn't let this blatant discrimination go unnoticed. She pulled out her phone and discreetly began recording the interactions. A few minutes later, another flight attendant, Mark, approached Sophia's seat. He leaned in and said, "Ma'am, is there a problem?" Sophia explained the situation, her voice calm but resolute. Mark listened, but it was clear from his expression that he had already made up his mind. "I'm sure it was just a misunderstanding," he said dismissively. "Emma has been with us for years. She's one of our best." "But she refused to give me a menu while handing them to others," Sophia replied. "I feel like I'm being treated differently because of how I look." Mark sighed, his patience wearing thin. "I suggest you enjoy the flight and not make a fuss," he said before walking away. Sophia felt a mix of anger and sadness. She looked around the cabin, hoping someone might speak up, but the other passengers remained silent. It was as if they were too afraid to get involved or simply didn't care. Determined not to let this slide, Sophia opened her phone and began typing a detailed account of the incident. She included everything: the dismissive comments, the lack of support from Mark, and the silent complicity of the other passengers. If no one else would stand up for her, she would stand up for herself. As the flight continued, Sophia maintained her composure. She didn't want to let the incident ruin her trip, but she also knew this was far from over. She had been wronged, and she was going to make sure the airline knew it. By the time the plane landed, Sophia had a plan. She wasn't going to shout or cause a scene. She was going to fight back in the most effective way possible, by going straight to the top. Confrontation, unique and lengthy. Sophia Daniels took a deep breath as the plane taxied to the gate. The experience had left her shaken, but her resolve was unbroken. She wasn't the type to let disrespect go unanswered, especially when it came to something as blatant as what she had just endured. The moment the seatbelt sign turned off, she gathered her belongings, her mind already strategizing her next move. As the passengers began to disembark, Sophia waited deliberately, letting most of them leave first. She didn't want to rush off in anger. Instead, she planned to have a direct conversation with the flight crew, especially Emma. This wasn't just about a menu anymore, it was about standing up for herself and making it clear that such behavior was unacceptable. When the aisle cleared, Sophia calmly approached the galley, where Emma and Mark were chatting casually. They seemed unaware of her presence until she spoke up. "Excuse me, Emma," Sophia said firmly, her voice cutting through the low hum of post-flight activity. "I'd like to speak with you about what happened during the flight." Emma turned, her expression shifting from surprise to annoyance. "Ma'am, the flight is over. If you have any concerns, you can contact customer service." Sophia didn't flinch. "I believe this conversation is better had now," she replied. "You refused to give me a menu while providing them to every other passenger around me. When I asked politely, you were dismissive and disrespectful. I'd like to understand why." Mark, who had been watching silently, stepped forward, attempting to defuse the situation. "Ma'am, as I mentioned earlier, this was likely a misunderstanding. There's no need to make a scene." Sophia met his gaze, her eyes steady. "A misunderstanding?" she asked, her tone sharp. "It didn't feel like a misunderstanding when Emma told me, maybe this class of service isn't for everyone. Was that also a misunderstanding?" Mark hesitated, clearly caught off guard. Emma, however, scoffed. "Look, I don't have time for this," she said, crossing her arms. "If you're not happy with the service, file a complaint like everyone else." Sophia's patience was wearing thin, but she maintained her composure. "I will be filing a complaint," she said. "But first, I want to give you both the opportunity to explain yourselves. Do you really believe that this is acceptable behavior?" Emma's dismissive attitude only fueled Sophia's determination. "I don't owe you an explanation," Emma said. "I was doing my job." "Doing your job?" Sophia repeated, her voice rising slightly. "Your job is to provide equal and respectful service to every passenger. But instead, you chose to single me out and humiliate me. Why? Because of my skin color? Because you assumed I didn't belong in first class?" The galley fell silent. A few other crew members nearby stopped what they were doing, their expressions a mix of curiosity and unease. Even Mark seemed unsure of how to respond. Sophia continued, her voice unwavering. You see, the thing about people like me is that we've been in this position before. We've heard the excuses, the justifications, the lies. But what we rarely hear is accountability. So, I'm giving you one last chance to take responsibility for your actions. Emma's face flushed, but instead of apologizing, she doubled down. I don't have to stand here and listen to this, she snapped. If you have a problem, take it up with the airline. Sophia nodded slowly, her expression calm but resolute. Don't worry, she said. I will. She turned on her heel and walked away, her dignity intact. As she exited the plane, she noticed a few passengers lingering in the terminal, watching her with expressions of quiet admiration. One woman, an older lady with kind eyes, approached her. I saw what happened, the woman said softly. You handled yourself with such grace. I'm sorry you had to go through that. Sophia smiled, appreciating the support. Thank you, she replied. I'm not letting this end here. Once she reached the airport's lounge, Sophia found a quiet corner and opened her laptop. She had already documented the incident during the flight, but now it was time to take things further. She composed a detailed email to the airline's CEO, recounting every moment of the experience with precise clarity. She included timestamps, descriptions of the staff involved, and even attached the video clips she had recorded. Her email was direct and professional. Subject: Urgent, Incident of Discrimination on Flight EW 452. Dear CEO's name. I am writing to bring to your attention a deeply concerning incident that occurred on my recent flight with Elite Wings Airlines. As a first-class passenger on Flight EW 452, I was subjected to discriminatory behavior by two members of your cabin crew, Emma, last name, and Mark, last name. Detailed account of the incident follows. This experience not only tarnished my perception of your airline but also raises serious questions about the inclusivity and professionalism of your staff. I have attached video evidence to corroborate my account. I trust that you will take this matter seriously and ensure that appropriate actions are taken to address the behavior of your employees. I look forward to your prompt response. Sincerely, Sophia Daniels. Sophia reread the email twice before hitting send. She knew that reaching out to the CEO was a bold move, but she also knew it was necessary. If she wanted real change, she had to take her concerns to the top. As she sat back and closed her laptop, Sophia felt a surge of pride. She had faced injustice head-on and refused to let it define her. Now, it was up to the airline to respond. Unbeknownst to Sophia, her email would soon set off a chain of events that would shake the very foundation of Elite Wings Airlines. But for now, she allowed herself a moment of peace, knowing she had done her part. The call, unique and lengthy. 2 days had passed since Sophia sent her email to the CEO of Elite Wings Airlines. She had been meticulous in documenting every detail, attaching her video recordings, and even citing the airline's own code of conduct. Now, all she could do was wait. Sophia wasn't just seeking an apology, she wanted systemic change. She wanted to ensure that no one else would have to endure what she had gone through. Her phone rang late in the afternoon while she was working in her home office. The caller ID showed a number she didn't recognize, but the area code suggested it was from the airline's headquarters. Sophia's heart quickened as she answered. Hello, this is Sophia Daniels, she said, keeping her tone professional. Good afternoon, Ms. Daniels. This is Lisa Grant, Executive Assistant to the CEO of Elite Wings Airlines. Thank you for taking my call, the voice on the other end said, calm and composed. We've received your email, and I'd like to assure you that it's being reviewed personally by Mr. Andrew Walters, our CEO. Sophia leaned back in her chair, her mind racing. Thank you for reaching out, Ms. Grant, she replied. I hope this means the airline is taking the matter seriously. Absolutely, Ms. Daniels, Lisa said. Mr. Walters has asked to set up a call with you personally to discuss the incident. He's deeply concerned about your experience and would like to address it directly. Sophia was momentarily taken aback. She hadn't expected the CEO to respond so quickly, let alone offer to speak with her directly. "I appreciate that," she said after a pause. "When would he be available?" Lisa suggested a time the following day, and Sophia agreed. As the call ended, a mix of emotions coursed through her: relief, anticipation, and a lingering sense of determination. This was her chance to not only demand accountability but also push for meaningful change. The next day, Sophia prepared carefully for the call. She reviewed her notes, ensuring she could present her case clearly and confidently. When the time came, she sat at her desk, phone in hand, waiting for the call to connect. "Ms. Daniels," a deep, authoritative voice greeted her. "This is Andrew Walters, CEO of Elite Wings Airlines. Thank you for taking the time to speak with me." "Thank you for reaching out, Mr. Walters," Sophia replied, her tone measured. "I appreciate the opportunity to discuss what happened." "I've read your email thoroughly and reviewed the video footage you provided," Walters began. "First and foremost, I want to express my sincerest apologies for the treatment you received on our flight. What you experienced was unacceptable and does not reflect the values or standards of Elite Wings Airlines." Sophia listened, noting the sincerity in his voice. But she wasn't here for platitudes. "I appreciate your apology, Mr. Walters," she said. "But I'm more interested in what actions the airline plans to take to address this issue. This isn't just about me, it's about the systemic biases that allow incidents like this to happen." Walters paused, as if weighing his words carefully. "You're absolutely right, Ms. Daniels. This is about more than one incident. It's about ensuring that our airline is a place where every passenger feels respected and valued, regardless of their background. To that end, we've already taken several steps." He went on to explain that the airline had launched an internal investigation, interviewing the flight crew and passengers who were present during the flight. "We've spoken to multiple passengers who corroborated your account," he said. "It's clear that the behavior of our staff, particularly Emma and Mark, was discriminatory and unprofessional. As of this morning, both employees have been suspended pending further disciplinary action." Sophia felt a small sense of vindication but remained composed. "Suspension is a start," she said. "But how will you ensure this doesn't happen again? What's being done to address the culture that allowed this behavior in the first place?" Walters seemed to appreciate her directness. "We're taking a multifaceted approach," he explained. "First, we're implementing mandatory inclusivity and sensitivity training for all employees, starting with our customer-facing staff. Second, we're establishing a dedicated task force to review our policies and procedures, ensuring they align with our commitment to diversity and inclusion. And third, we're creating a passenger feedback program to give customers a stronger voice in how we operate." Sophia nodded, impressed by the thoroughness of the plan but not entirely convinced. "These are important steps," she said. "But I hope you understand that trust isn't rebuilt overnight. This will require ongoing effort and transparency." "Absolutely," Walters agreed. "Which is why I'd like to invite you to participate in this process. Your experience and perspective are invaluable, and we would be honored if you join our newly formed advisory board on diversity and inclusion." Sophia was stunned. She hadn't expected to be offered such a role, but the idea resonated with her. This was an opportunity to turn her negative experience into something positive, something that could make a difference. "That's a generous offer," she said after a moment. "I'll need some time to consider it, but I'm open to the idea." Walters thanked her and assured her that the airline would keep her updated on the investigation and the steps they were taking. As the call ended, Sophia felt a sense of accomplishment. She had stood up for herself and sparked real change within a major corporation. But she also knew this was just the beginning. That evening, Sophia received an email summarizing the call and detailing the actions the airline was taking. It included an official apology, signed by the CEO, which would also be published on their website. Additionally, the airline offered her a lifetime first-class membership as a gesture of goodwill. Sophia appreciated the gesture but knew that true justice was about more than personal benefits. She replied, thanking them for their efforts but emphasizing the importance of transparency and follow-through. Word of Sophia's story began to spread, first through social media and then to news outlets. People admired her courage and determination, and many shared similar experiences, sparking a broader conversation about discrimination in the airline industry. Sophia had turned a painful moment into a platform for change. But as she read through the messages of support pouring in, she realized her journey wasn't over. She had a responsibility to keep pushing for accountability, not just at Elite Wings Airlines, but across the industry. This was no longer just about her, it was about justice, equality, and ensuring that every passenger, no matter who they were, could travel with dignity. Investigation. The ripple effect of Sophia's actions was immediate and far-reaching. By the time the investigation was officially launched by Elite Wings Airlines, Sophia's story had already gained traction on social media. Passengers from all walks of life shared her story, many recounting their own experiences of discrimination while traveling. A hashtag #FlyWithRespect, began trending, calling for accountability and fairness in the airline industry. For Elite Wings Airlines, this was more than just a public relations nightmare, it was a wake-up call. Under the direct supervision of CEO Andrew Walters, a dedicated team was formed to lead the investigation. The team comprised senior executives, legal advisors, and independent diversity consultants. Their mandate was clear: uncover the truth, take corrective actions, and rebuild trust with their passengers. The internal review. The investigation began with the flight crew. Emma and Mark were summoned to the airline's headquarters for a formal inquiry. Both appeared confident at first, brushing off the incident as a misunderstanding blown out of proportion. Emma claimed that she had been under stress and denied any discriminatory intent. Mark, on the other hand, insisted he had acted appropriately by trying to de-escalate the situation. But the investigators had done their homework. They presented Emma and Mark with passenger testimonials, including statements from several first-class travelers who had witnessed the incident. One passenger, a middle-aged businessman, described Emma's behavior as blatantly dismissive and unprofessional. Another passenger, a young woman seated across the aisle from Sophia, confirmed that she had heard Emma's derogatory comment, "Maybe this class of service isn't for everyone." When the investigators showed Emma the video Sophia had recorded, her composure faltered. The footage was damning, capturing Emma's dismissive tone and Mark's failure to intervene effectively. The investigators pressed her further, revealing that this wasn't her first complaint. Over the past year, Emma had been the subject of multiple passenger grievances, all citing her poor attitude and unprofessional behavior. Mark, too, had a record of complaints, though his infractions were less severe. Faced with overwhelming evidence, both Emma and Mark became defensive. Emma accused the airline of scapegoating her, while Mark tried to downplay his involvement. But the investigators remained firm, emphasizing that their primary goal was accountability and fairness. The passenger interviews. The team also reached out to other passengers from the flight, many of whom were eager to share their experiences. One elderly couple recounted how uncomfortable they felt watching Sophia being singled out. "We wanted to say something," the wife admitted, "but we weren't sure if it was our place. Looking back, I wish we had spoken up." Another passenger, a man seated 2 rows behind Sophia, provided a particularly compelling account. "I noticed the flight attendant skipping over her," he said. "It was deliberate. You could see it in her body language. It wasn't just bad service, it was personal." These testimonials painted a clear picture of what had transpired and highlighted a broader issue within the airline's culture. It wasn't just about Emma and Mark, it was about the systemic failures that allowed such behavior to persist unchecked. The broader investigation. As the internal review unfolded, the airline's diversity consultants delved deeper into the company's policies and practices. They uncovered troubling patterns, including a lack of diversity in leadership roles and inadequate training on bias and inclusion. Many employees reported feeling unsupported when raising concerns about workplace discrimination. One former employee, who had resigned from her role as a flight attendant 2 years earlier, shared her story with the investigative team. "I loved my job, but the culture was toxic," she said. Complaints about unfair treatment were often ignored, and those who spoke up faced retaliation. These findings added a new layer of urgency to the investigation. It became clear that addressing Sophia's incident was just the first step. The airline needed a complete cultural overhaul. The CEO's response. Andrew Walters was not one to shy away from challenges. As the findings poured in, he convened a meeting with the investigative team, board members, and senior executives. "This isn't just about fixing what went wrong on one flight," he said firmly. "This is about transforming our company from the ground up." Walters worked closely with the diversity consultants to draft a comprehensive action plan. Key initiatives included enhanced training programs. The airline would implement mandatory diversity, equity, and inclusion (DEI) training for all employees, with a focus on recognizing and addressing unconscious bias. A zero-tolerance policy. A new code of conduct was introduced, making it clear that discriminatory behavior would result in immediate termination. Anonymous reporting channels. Employees and passengers would have access to a secure platform to report concerns without fear of retaliation. Diversity in leadership. The airline committed to increasing diversity within its leadership team and creating mentorship programs for underrepresented groups. Passenger Advocacy Board. A new advisory board, which Sophia was invited to join, would work alongside the airline to ensure accountability and inclusivity. Justice served. After weeks of deliberation, the investigation concluded with decisive actions. Emma's employment was terminated, and Mark was demoted and placed on probation with a requirement to complete extensive training. Both were informed that their actions had violated the airline's core values and would not be tolerated. Sophia received a personal letter from Andrew Walters, outlining the steps the airline was taking and thanking her for her courage in bringing the issue to light. The airline also issued a public apology, acknowledging its shortcomings and pledging to do better. The public reaction. The airline's response was met with mixed reactions. Many praised the company's transparency and commitment to change, while others remained skeptical, questioning whether the reforms would have a lasting impact. Sophia, however, saw the situation as a victory, not just for herself, but for everyone who had ever felt marginalized or mistreated. Sophia's new mission. Sophia's involvement didn't end with the investigation. She accepted the airline's invitation to join the Passenger Advocacy Board, where she worked tirelessly to ensure that policies were implemented effectively. Her story became a rallying cry for change, inspiring others to speak out against injustice. Through her advocacy, Sophia transformed a painful experience into a powerful movement, proving that one voice, when used with courage and conviction, can spark change on a global scale. Justice served. Sophia Daniels woke up to a flood of notifications on her phone. News outlets had picked up her story, and social media was ablaze with discussions about Elite Wings Airlines. The hashtag #FlyWithRespect was trending globally, with thousands of people sharing their own travel experiences of discrimination, poor treatment, or unfair practices. Sophia's story had become a symbol of resistance, a call for accountability in industries where customers often felt powerless. Elite Wings Airlines was at the center of this firestorm, and the company's leadership knew that its response to the situation would set a precedent, not just for their airline, but for the entire industry. Andrew Walters, the CEO, was determined to turn the incident into an opportunity for transformation. He convened an emergency meeting with his executive team to finalize the steps needed to rebuild trust and ensure lasting change. The announcement. In a press conference streamed live to millions, Walters addressed the public. Standing at a podium adorned with the airline's logo, he spoke with measured sincerity. "Ladies and gentlemen, I stand before you today to acknowledge a failure, not just in our service, but in upholding the values we claim to stand for. The experience of Ms. Sophia Daniels on one of our flights was unacceptable. On behalf of Elite Wings Airlines, I offer my deepest apologies to her and to anyone else who has ever felt disrespected or marginalized while traveling with us." The room was silent as Walters continued. Our investigation has revealed not only the individual failures of certain employees, but also systemic shortcomings within our organization. This is unacceptable, and it ends now. Today, I am announcing a series of sweeping reforms designed to ensure that every passenger, regardless of their background, is treated with dignity and respect. He detailed the reforms, which included the termination of the flight attendant Emma and the demotion and probation of Mark. More importantly, he highlighted the structural changes the airline was implementing: diversity training, a zero-tolerance policy for discrimination, and a new advisory board that included passengers like Sophia. Walters concluded with a pledge. "This incident has shown us where we must do better, and I assure you, we will. Ms. Daniels, if you are watching, thank you for your courage. You have sparked a change that will benefit countless others." Sophia's reaction. Sophia watched the press conference from her living room, her phone buzzing constantly with messages of support and questions from reporters. She felt a mix of emotions: relief that her voice had been heard, satisfaction that action was being taken, and a sense of responsibility to ensure the airline followed through on its promises. She received an email from Walters shortly after the conference, reiterating his gratitude and inviting her to a private meeting to discuss the reforms further. Sophia accepted. She knew this was her chance to ensure the changes were meaningful and not just superficial gestures to save face. The meeting with the CEO. The following week, Sophia arrived at Elite Wings Airlines headquarters. The building was a towering structure of glass and steel, reflecting the sky above. Sophia was escorted to a spacious conference room where Walters and several executives awaited her. "Ms. Daniels," Walters said warmly as he stood to greet her. "Thank you for coming. I've been looking forward to this meeting." Sophia nodded, her demeanor professional but firm. "Thank you for inviting me. I'm here because I want to ensure that the actions you've announced lead to real change." Over the next hour, they discussed the reforms in detail. Sophia asked pointed questions, challenging the executives on how they plan to implement and monitor the changes. She emphasized the importance of accountability and transparency, urging them to share progress updates with the public. Walters agreed, promising to provide quarterly reports on the initiatives. "We want you to be part of this process, Ms. Daniels," he said. "Your insights and experiences are invaluable." Sophia appreciated the gesture but remained cautious. "Words are powerful, Mr. Walters, but actions speak louder. I'll be watching closely." The ripple effect. The airline's response sent shockwaves through the industry. Competitor airlines began reviewing their own policies, wary of facing similar scrutiny. Industry leaders hosted forums on diversity and inclusivity, citing Sophia's story as a turning point. The changes at Elite Wings Airlines became a blueprint for others, sparking a movement that extended beyond aviation. Sophia's story continued to inspire. She was invited to speak at conferences, universities, and corporate events, sharing her journey and advocating for equity and respect in all industries. Her voice became a beacon for those who had suffered in silence, encouraging them to stand up for their rights. A new chapter for Sophia. While the public attention was overwhelming at times, Sophia found solace in knowing she had made a difference. She joined the airline's advisory board, working alongside other advocates to shape policies that prioritized inclusivity and fairness. She also launched a nonprofit organization, Wings of Equality, dedicated to addressing discrimination in travel and hospitality industries. Sophia's nonprofit provided resources for passengers to report incidents, offered legal support for those seeking justice, and partnered with companies to develop better training programs for employees. Her work was celebrated worldwide, earning her awards and recognition, but for Sophia, the greatest reward was knowing she had empowered others to demand better justice for all. Months later, Sophia was invited to attend a special event hosted by Elite Wings Airlines. The airline was unveiling a new initiative, the Sophia Daniels Commitment to Respect and Equality Award, which would be given annually to employees who demonstrated exceptional dedication to inclusivity and customer service. Sophia stood on the stage as Walters presented the first award. Ms. Daniels, your courage has not only transformed our airline but has also inspired change across our industry. This award is a testament to your impact and a reminder that one voice can spark a movement. The audience erupted in applause as Sophia stepped forward to accept the award. She looked out at the crowd, executives, employees, passengers, and advocates, and felt a profound sense of pride. "Thank you," she began, her voice steady. "This award is not just for me, it's for everyone who has ever felt unseen, unheard, or disrespected. It's a symbol of what we can achieve when we stand up for what's right. But let it also be a reminder that the work doesn't end here. Justice is not a destination, it's a journey, and we must all walk it together." The applause grew louder, echoing through the hall. For Sophia, this moment wasn't the end of her story, it was the beginning of a new chapter, one defined by hope, resilience, and the unwavering belief that change was always possible. The impact. Months after the confrontation that had unfolded on an Elite Wings Airlines flight, Sophia Daniels sat in her home office, reflecting on how her life had changed. What began as a humiliating moment of discrimination had evolved into a global movement for respect, equality, and accountability. Sophia never imagined that her story would resonate so deeply with people across the world or that it would spark a profound cultural shift within an entire industry. Sophia's rising influence. Sophia's courage and persistence had turned her into a household name. Media outlets hailed her as a symbol of strength and resilience, and she was frequently invited to speak at conferences, universities, and leadership seminars. Her story was even featured in a best-selling book titled Taking Flight: Stories of Resistance and Triumph in Modern Society, where she shared the emotional journey that had led to her public confrontation with injustice. Through her advocacy work and growing platform, Sophia began receiving messages from people all over the world. Some wrote to thank her for her bravery, sharing how her story had inspired them to stand up against unfair treatment in their own lives. Others reached out with their own experiences of discrimination, hoping for advice or simply a listening ear. Sophia made it her mission to respond to as many of these messages as possible. "No one should ever feel invisible," she often said in interviews. "Every voice matters, and every story deserves to be heard." The transformation of Elite Wings Airlines. Meanwhile, the reforms at Elite Wings Airlines were gaining momentum. Under Andrew Walter's leadership and with Sophia's guidance as a member of the Passenger Advocacy Board, the airline implemented sweeping changes that quickly became a model for the industry. One of the most notable transformations was the launch of the Customer Inclusion Program, which provided passengers with a dedicated platform to share feedback and report incidents. The program included a hotline staffed by trained advocates who could offer support and resolution strategies. The airline also introduced new employee incentives, rewarding those who exemplified inclusivity and exceptional service. Sophia played a key role in developing these programs. Her insights, drawn from her own experience and the stories she had collected from others, ensured that the reforms were practical and impactful. She worked tirelessly, often staying up late to review policy drafts or attend virtual meetings with the board. The results were undeniable. Complaints about discriminatory behavior dropped by 70% within the first year, and customer satisfaction scores reached an all-time high. Passengers began praising Elite Wings Airlines for its commitment to inclusivity, and the company's efforts were recognized with several industry awards. The broader movement. Sophia's impact extended far beyond the airline industry. Inspired by her story, organizations in other sectors began examining their own practices and policies. Retailers, hospitality companies, and even tech firms launched internal reviews to address bias and discrimination. Sophia became a sought-after consultant, helping companies navigate these challenges. Her approach was always collaborative. "I'm not here to point fingers," she would tell executives. "I'm here to help you create a culture where everyone feels valued." Her nonprofit, Wings of Equality, expanded rapidly. What had started as a small organization focused on travel discrimination grew into a global network advocating for equity across industries. It offered training programs, legal assistance, and resources for individuals and businesses alike. Sophia also launched a scholarship fund through the nonprofit, providing financial support to young people pursuing careers in fields where diversity was underrepresented. A new legacy. Sophia's influence reached a new milestone when a major university announced the creation of the Sophia Daniels Center for Social Justice and Equity. The center was dedicated to researching systemic inequality, developing solutions, and training the next generation of leaders to advocate for change. At the inauguration ceremony, Sophia stood on stage before a crowd of students, faculty, and community leaders. "This center isn't about me," she said, her voice steady with emotion. "It's about the power of perseverance, the importance of allyship, and the belief that every one of us can be a catalyst for change." The applause was thunderous, and as Sophia looked out at the sea of faces, she felt a profound sense of fulfillment. Her journey had not been easy, but it had been worth it. The personal journey. Despite her public success, Sophia remained grounded. She continued to prioritize her personal well-being and relationships, finding joy in the small moments, walking her dog, hosting dinner parties for close friends, and volunteering at local community centers. She often said that these moments kept her connected to her purpose and reminded her why she had fought so hard for justice. Sophia also took time to reflect on the emotional toll of her journey. While she was proud of her accomplishments, she acknowledged that standing up to injustice had been exhausting at times. To support her mental health, she began journaling regularly and practicing mindfulness. These practices not only helped her process her experiences, but also gave her clarity and focus as she navigated her advocacy work. A message to the world. Sophia's story culminated in an invitation to deliver a keynote address at the United Nations Annual Summit on Human Rights. Standing before world leaders, activists, and dignitaries, she shared her story one more time, not as a tale of personal triumph, but as a call to action. "We live in a world where silence often feels safer than speaking out," she began. "But silence allows injustice to thrive. I'm standing here today because I refuse to stay silent, and because others, strangers, friends, and allies, chose to amplify my voice." She paused, letting the words sink in. Change doesn't happen overnight, and it doesn't happen in isolation. It happens when we work together, when we listen to one another, and when we hold ourselves and our institutions accountable. The fight for justice is not a moment, it's a movement. And it's one we must all commit to, every single day. The room erupted into a standing ovation. Sophia's speech was hailed as a defining moment of the summit, and her message echoed around the globe. The final chapter. As Sophia reflected on her journey, she realized that her story was never truly about her. It was about the countless people who had faced similar challenges but never had the opportunity to speak out. It was about creating a world where everyone, regardless of their background, could walk into any space and be treated with respect. Her life had become a testament to the power of resilience, the importance of allyship, and the belief that one person could ignite a global movement. And as Sophia looked toward the future, she knew one thing for certain: the fight for justice was far from over, but together, they could change the world, one step at a time.